Welcome to Green Giants, Titans of Renewable Energy, the podcast where insights and innovation meet. Every episode, we dive into conversations with industry leaders, experts, and change makers, bringing you the stories and ideas in the renewable energy sector that shape our world. And now, let's jump into today's episode with your host, Wes Ashworth. Welcome back to Green Giants, Titans of Renewable Energy. Today's guest is Dr. Janette Freeman, Vice President of Business Development at Fabtech Solar Solutions, one of the few companies in the U.S. specializing in solar panel recycling and refurbishment. Janette brings over 26 years of leadership experience, a PhD in consciousness studies, and a powerful mission to keep solar panels out of landfills and in the circular economy. We're going to explore how Fabtech is redefining what happens at the end of a solar panel's life, the economics behind recycling, and the mindset it takes to build an industry from the ground up. Janette, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Wes. I'm so glad to be here and love that you're highlighting this important subject. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a pleasure to have you. I've been looking forward to this conversation and kind of getting into it. And such a cool topic. But before we get into some of the meat of it, I want to always start just a little bit of your origin. So you've been at Fabtech just over 5 years, but you bring, of course, as I said, more than 26 years of leadership experience. What was that moment when you realized solar panel recycling could define your work?
Well, actually, it started after I worked here. It was a kind of an interesting situation and COVID, and my sister owned this company, and she says, we could really use your skills. And so it was like life threw me into this opportunity. And then as I started researching and digging in and understanding a little bit about the needs, then that purpose and that mission became defined. So it's like I always believe, like, bloom where you're planted, you know, like life kind of shows up in different ways sometimes. And it was like, okay, so how can I, dig in here and find where the most need is and how can I get excited about it? And that's, for me, my personal journey in how that happened. And then it was super exciting because it just seemed like an amazing fit that I hadn't seen coming.
I love those stories, right? I think it's some of the coolest ones happen that way. My journey's similar. Like, I didn't intend to do what I'm doing now, but you found it and you bloom where you're planted. You find something you love and you're passionate about, but it wouldn't have been in my plans when it started. But
I know.
Yeah. A lot of the best careers happen that way, I think.
I think so too.
Yeah. So now you've been in it, you're doing great things with Fabtech. And I know, so Fabtech started salvaging electronics before pivoting to solar. Tell me a little bit about that. So how did that happen and what was the transition like?
So again, this was my brother-in-law and my sister, and they had been refurbishing electronics, and they were basically salvage buyers. They bought truckloads of telephones and truckloads of other things and then fixed them up and sold them to the consumer or sold them to other buyers. And so in that salvage business, they had contacts that eventually had some solar panels. They had solar panels that, hey, can you do something with this? Now, Bob was an engineer and he was an entrepreneur. And so he got some solar panels and basically figured out they didn't need too much and figured out how to sell solar panels. So it went like crazy that as soon as they got some solar panels and they figured this out and they were selling on eBay basically to consumers, these used solar panels, they figured out, wash them and fix them. And then they had to do some other repairs on different panels, and they were getting a steady stream. And then they got a great contract with the manufacturer to bring in a whole lot of 250 watt panels. And so they were just selling the heck out of these 250 watt panels. So that's how it happened. They went from 12,000 square feet to all of a sudden needing a lot more. Then it was 30,000 square feet, and then it was 50,000 square feet, and it was 75,000 square feet. Solar panels take a lot more space than telephones.
Right.
Yeah. And so that was the combination of how they brought me on. Is they brought me on because they did not have a lot of relationships in the renewable energy industry, and they didn't have a footprint in that industry very much. So they brought me on, and I guess my skills are basically building relationships and doing some, basic marketing and getting out there with messaging and marketing. And so it just was a great fit. And then that became my passion, is learning all about it and then reaching out and working LinkedIn and getting on shows and doing things in order to get that message out there. And then, of course, building partnerships and relationships all through the industry and building
Yeah.
and growing this recycling business from
Yeah.
ground up to really build the partnerships and the structures so that I could fill the needs of the customers that were needing recycling.
Yeah, I love that story, just kind of how it evolved, right? And I think so much people, when they set out, they want to have this very defined plan for their life or for their business, right? And we're going to do this and that, and it really, ends up that way. It's like you find those opportunities, those moments where you pivot and find a new space or something that makes sense, and falling into that kind of solar panel recycling, and then what it's grown to today is really cool and incredible. Like watching that happen. So I always love those stories.
I love those stories too. I mean, that's the personal development side of me that I love so much. And from a personal perspective, I had a big business and a personal brand as a meditation teacher and doing all this. And then it was like I kind of put that over in this bucket, and I turned that completely off to build this new thing, which was solar panel recycling, and then came up with solar panel recycling evangelist. And so it was an entirely different identity, but both parts of those identities, and we all have this, right? We have so many different identities, whether it's, work and family, and some of us have two or three work identities. And it's like how to integrate that and bring that together, because life doesn't just come out with like the straight road. And those people that can walk a crooked road and realizing that even though it's crooked, it still comes together in kind of a perfect way.
Yeah. And to your point, I think it's all connected, right? And as much as sometimes we want to, bifurcate it and have these little separate pockets, like it is all connected, and kind of with that too. So I was really intrigued. You've got this PhD in consciousness studies, which is really interesting to me. And I'm curious how that has shaped the way you think about the circular economy or the human side of renewable energy and recycling just in general.
Yeah, like we were saying, it's not a separate part of who I am, right?
Yeah.
And so it shapes everything. And especially my background in that education is all about human development and our happiness and the way that we live our lives. So of course it integrates into everything. Mostly it integrates into the everyday life of how I do business and how I manage my own happiness and manage my own state. But it also ties into that deep need of wanting to make a difference. And that's what was so important to me about renewable energy. I've always been an advocate of solar and had solar on my homes. And I've always been a believer of taking care of the earth as much as possible. And so it really tied into it. It's like this understanding that as consciousness, as human beings, that we're all connected. What one person does affects the other person. We're not separate entities. We're part of a collective energy and a collective consciousness. So, the pieces that we play make a difference. And so that totally tied in. And that's why I've been happy here, is that I could feel like I was making a difference, and I could feel like I was contributing in some small way to the collective growth of our peoples or our planet or something.
Right? Absolutely. Doing good work. I think it's so cool. I'd say it's somewhat probably rare to hear somebody in like a recycling focus speak about consciousness, but I think it is so important, right? That human, how we operate, how we make decisions, our mindset, our mentality, this is how we go about it. And recycling, I think the decisions you make play a big part in that, and how that all happens and comes to be. So I'm sure it's helpful as you're having conversations too, and knowing, how to get to the root of where somebody's at and what they're thinking and how they're thinking.
Yeah. And it's great to be on a show where you're bringing this part into the conversation. Most of the time I'm, talking about how many solar panels they have and what's their condition and where they located. So it's kind of fun once in a while to have a deeper conversation.
Yeah, I quite enjoy it. I think again, that connection between purpose and practicality, as you shared a little bit there, it's a very unique lens. I want to dig into a little bit of that recycling landscape, what it looks like today, because I think the perception and the reality are still miles apart. And so I want to try to shed some light on that. So you've shared with me like one of the biggest misconceptions or biggest objections, to solar is really the landfill problem. How big is this problem really? And what misconceptions kind of, frustrate you the most or out there?
Yeah. I mean, that is a big objection, when communities are arguing not wanting solar and they blame that it's all going to the landfill.
Yeah.
And it is, the fact is that while it is an objection against solar, the waste problem of in the solar industry is minute
Yeah.
compared to other industries. It's, compared to municipal waste and coal ash, plastic, e-waste, oil, sludge, etc. The percentage of solar waste is extremely small. It is smaller than any of those. So the big objection does not really fly. It doesn't,
Mhm.
it's not really that much of a problem.
Yeah.
Now, do we need to, is it an issue? Yeah, it is an issue because solar panels are big. They don't break down. We don't want to be mining new raw material indefinitely. In fact, we can't.
Yeah.
So we've got to keep them out of the landfill, and we've got to be able to find solutions to recycle those solar panels. So yeah, so it is important, but it's not Armageddon.
Yeah. Yeah. I like the way you frame that. And I think that's such important context, right? And I think people do that often. If you want to, prove an argument, you take a little isolated data point and kind of
Right,
going like, well, solar has waste, and that's bad. And it's like, yeah, but it's a drop in the bucket compared to all the other,
right,
what it's replacing and all those sort of things. And yet the industry still is working on that tiny drop in the bucket waste and trying to make that better and improves. I think that is really important to always frame up and think about. People often kind of take this one little isolated, data point and try to make this big fuss of it. And the reality is it is not that. So I
right.
appreciate you sharing that and
Yes,
agree.
definitely.
So one of the things that you shared with me was a little bit, I didn't know, I wasn't aware. So I was always love learning something new. I put it out there. But so you said right now, like 75% of panels you recycle are kind of like damaged in new construction, and not necessarily end of life decommissions. I thought that was a little
Right?
surprising, but I guess why is it surprising? What does it reveal about the state of the industry?
Well, it reveals the amount of growth that's happening in the new build of solar. So
Yeah.
the amount of growth, and I don't have stats on it, but everybody knows it's just huge. And I'm
Yeah.
talking, yes, commercial, but mostly utility scale.
Yeah.
So at the end of a utility scale installation, there's always going to be a percentage, like 0.3% or 1% of panels that get broken in construction. So those are 75% of the jobs I'm doing. I don't know what everybody else is doing, but that's basically those always need recycling. There's no reuse capacity on that because they're
Yeah.
broken glass by that point. We are seeing end of life decommissions where the panels are getting recycled, these 250-watt panels that are coming off old legacy sites and that sort
Mhm.
of thing. And then we're also seeing weather issues, weather incidences that are causing the need for recycling. So more
Mhm.
hurricanes are
Mhm.
happening and hail and that sort of thing. Weather incidences. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And then thinking about, so sometimes obviously, panels can't be refurbished and have to be recycled, but how do you decide that? Whether panels should be like refurbished for resale or fully recycled? What's the line between reusable and resellable?
Well, first of all, it's important to know that that's always my first priority if a panel
Yeah.
can get into the reuse market and get into that. And we can tell that by some basic facts. How old are those solar panels? What is their
Mhm.
make, model, and wattage? What is the damage, if any, and how old they are? And then I can pretty much tell. Now, there's another important difference between reusable and resellable. And a lot of times panels will come off a site and they are reusable. They really are. Say a 250-watt panel comes off, it's been up for 15 years. Is it going to still work? It is going to work. Somebody could use it, but it's not resellable for a
Yeah.
company like ours. Costs a lot. There's a lot of cost to just bring it in
Mhm.
and to refurbish, wash, clean, test, and to market it and to get it into the marketplace. And then if you can only sell it for $10, it's not gonna make sense, right? So that's an issue. Now, the first thing somebody says is, well, those are good panels. If they're going to work, then they could go into the export market, right? Where somebody can use those. And that sounds like a great idea, but it still costs a lot to get it to those countries.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's this sweet spot where, something is worth it. And then I will work with the customer to see how can we make it work. For example, there may be sliding scale of how it works. For example, we pay you for those. Those are good resellable panels. I'll pay you for those, and I'll even pay the shipping to get them off of there because those are valuable. I do the numbers. There may be another situation. Well, I won't pay you for those panels, but I'll pay the shipping. So you're going to save shipping and you're going to save recycling costs, and that's significant. So that's a win. And another situation might be, I'm not going to pay you for them and I'm not going to pay the shipping, but you can pay the shipping and I'll take those solar panels. So, and then there'll be the next situation where I'm not paying you, I'm not shipping them, and nobody's going to want them. So we're recycling those panels. Then I'm going to work with you to get to the closest facility and see what we can do to save on freight and get those packaged up for recycling.
Yeah, it's cool hearing just how that sort of the math comes into play and looking at those situations individually.
Right.
And I would for me, I would think the appetite would be pretty high of somebody that kind of wants to get rid of them in a way. Like I could see a lot more of like, I don't even want to make money off of this. Like I just want it off my hands and want it to be reused or, repurposed or what have you. I would think that, but I obviously don't know.
That's absolutely the case.
Yeah.
That's absolutely the case. A lot of people are like, yeah, can you just come and get these? And if I can, I will.
Yeah.
We like to do that.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a win-win. Win for everybody around.
Yeah, exactly.
So dealing with, you're communicating sometimes with like developers, EPCs, asset owners about solar recycling. What are we have a lot of those listeners on the podcast. Like, what are some of the most common myths you hear from those groups? And then, if you want to like speak to each one of those as well too.
Yeah. One of the things that we hear is that recycling isn't even available yet.
Yeah.
Which always surprises me. Like, really? Like, where you been?
Yeah.
But there's, it's like, you can't recycle solar panels and it's not even available yet. No, the recycling infrastructure definitely does exist, and it's growing. It's changing all the time across the US and globally. And so the challenge really isn't availability. It's more about awareness. Building awareness around solar panel recycling has always been my mission. Just talking about it. I'll talk to practically anybody about it. So it's like building awareness. The other thing is that there's a myth that recycling doesn't cost anything. It's like, well, come and get these panels and I'll give them to you for recycling. And there's a lot of confusion on what is recycling. I get called all the time they've got a bunch of broken panels and they want to give those to me because I'm going to be able to recycle those and make money.
Yeah.
But what people don't understand is solar panels, because of the makeup of the solar panels, they're very durable. They're made with several different types of material. You have to separate the material in order to benefit from the material, and the separation processes are quite expensive. The equipment's very expensive. It's an expensive process to separate that panel. They just don't know, and that there is a cost to recycle. So we're not interested in taking your broken panels for free. I wish they could.
Yeah.
The other thing is really that it's too expensive. So without really researching, a lot of companies just don't even want to, it's too expensive to recycle. We'll find the nearest landfill, anybody that will take them. The fact is that just in the last 6 years, I've seen the cost of recycling go down quite a bit. Recycling costs are dropping as technology is improving, as there's more competition, and it will continue to work better as more markets are discovered and for these recovered materials, and as that continues to grow. Plus, the other thing is landfill costs are increasing. So landfill fees, transport costs are on the rise. And then there's other factors that we can talk about later. The costs, the unknown, the future costs, like the costs of regulatory risk and reputation risk. Anyway, so that's one. Another one is that used panels have no value. Well, used panels do have value, and many of those panels will still be producing 80-90% of its original power and output, and those can be reused and those can be repurposed. Now, we could talk about the used panel market.
Yeah.
I'll just say this, many people are probably aware, the price of new panels in the last 2-3 years went down considerably. We were just infused with solar panels into the marketplace. And so pricing went really low and the reuse market completely dumped. So while we were bringing in 4 years ago, we're bringing in lots of panels for reuse and getting them repurposed, the market just dumped because why would somebody buy a used panel when for a few dollars more they could get a new?
Yeah.
So that's been a challenge that we've been dealing with. But now the price of panels is going back up and the reuse market again is having a resurgence. So I'm actually happy that there could be some use because it's a shame when there's so many used panels coming off that really are good panels and will give another 15, 20 years that they couldn't be used by people and they couldn't be some inexpensive solar taken advantage of.
Yeah, I love those good, quick points and clarity and some of those myths. And yeah, obviously, it sounds like myth busting is almost a part of your everyday job description. And I
Right.
agree. So the education's so important, right? And
It
getting the right
is.
information out there. So you've painted a clear picture of kind of where we are. I want to shift gears a little bit into the economics because for most companies, the decision to recycle comes down to dollars and risk. I think we're all familiar with that, but obviously you said there too. So recycling costs money, makes some companies hesitate. How do you help them just see it not as maybe a call center, but as a risk
Yeah.
mitigation and brand opportunity?
Yeah. Yeah, recycling does cost money, but not doing anything or doing the wrong thing can cause a lot more problems and can be a cost. One is regulatory risk, possible regulatory risk. Lots of new state and federal rules are emerging quickly. And so by being compliant now can prevent penalties later. For example, solar panels, thousands of solar panels, let's say you could put them in a landfill and you make the choice to put them in a landfill versus get them recycled. You think you saved a lot of money a few years down the road. Those can be those are still tracked to the company. I think the bigger thing is reputation risk. I don't think there's a large company out there that would want a newscast story doing a story on their company landfilling thousands of solar panels. So if you don't want a news story talking about it, then you probably shouldn't be doing it because there's always going to be a risk. So the reputation risk for investors and companies is very important. And to be in the renewable industry, we are talking renewable energy and circularity all the time.
Yeah.
So you don't want to be, a company that's landfilling so many of the solar panels. So I know that there's still a lot of landfilling that takes place. And I also know that there's a lot less landfilling taking place now than there was 5 years ago. So that's a good sign. The other thing, and that makes it important, is not just the landfill, is that we cannot mine this raw materials indefinitely. There's a certain amount of silver, right, and copper, and we can't continue to mine that and then throw away those good resources in a landfill and to have to be remined all over again. So to me, that's the bigger issue, is using those materials again and again and not just expecting to pull those out of the earth forever. It won't happen. So I think that more and more companies are making the decision. Now, in a conversation with Robert over at SIA, he's over the recycling program, we were discussing this one day, and he reminded me that this industry really is the first industry who has gotten ahead of their waste issues all on their own without being legislated to do that.
Yeah.
So the industry itself is self-managing and self-leading by taking care of handling some of these waste issues now, building the infrastructure to handle it. The recycling industry infrastructure is expanding, and it's expanding not because of government expanding it. It's expanding because of market. There's money to be made. There has to be money to be made, or it won't grow. So I'm proud of this industry, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
Because we're not that old, and yet we're
Right.
really thinking about a circular economy already,
Yeah.
and how can we be responsible for our end of life.
Yeah, I love that. The industry already leading the way and doing those right things without being required to. But yeah, I like shifting that mindset from the overall value, obviously risk mitigation, brand reputation, obviously just doing the right thing, right? So we talked a little bit about landfills, and one of the things that landfills themselves are some are now refusing panels. Curious just how has that shifted the recycling conversation? Does it give you hope that maybe the market will solve this faster than regulation, as you started to touch on there in your last answer?
Yeah. What gives me hope is many landfills are refusing solar panels
Yeah.
by themselves, right?
Uh-huh.
Especially in highly dense populations like up in the Northeast,
Yeah.
where they don't have large landfills for one thing. And then in California and other places, and then Texas just came out with some legislation, which was shocking, that landfills, they're not going to be able to landfill solar panels. So yeah, so legislation takes a long time to take place. And so the landfills themselves are doing that. And then I also hope that I've heard of this. I can see a solution where the counties that manage landfills provide recycling services for solar panels that come in. So there could be a charge right there at the landfill, and then they could downstream it to a local or the closest recycler. So I can see that sort of situation happening as well, where they end up being a facilitator to make sure they get recycled, which is a useful solution for homeowners and the residential market with smaller scale solar panels that they need to get rid of and they don't know what to do with them. Anyway, I think it's like any new industry. Like if you had a new business, you're constantly figuring out what you do next and how do you solve the next problem, right? And so in a little more macro way, this industry itself is doing that too. The industry is made up of human beings and people and corporations. And so we're all kind of, finding problems and trying to find solutions and continuing to work to find those solutions. So that's happening before, a government is going to tell us exactly how we're supposed to manage it.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's always a good reminder. I've said before that, if you wait and wait and wait for a perfect solution, you're just never going to get anywhere. Nothing's ever going to happen. Like you have to start somewhere. You got to start today.
Right.
And then it slowly is, like you said, it's going to mature. Things are going to happen. Innovation happens. Legislation changes. People change. And it gets better and better and better. That's how industries evolve. I think sometimes we get so stuck on like, we want this perfect solution today and want it all to be, perfect and done. And it's just not practical, so it is important that, hey, accept where we are. We're doing some great things that should be celebrated. We're making great progress every day. And as you said, it's sort of short time, and how young the industry really is. So it's cool to see that.
Yeah.
Obviously the economics are evolving quickly. There's also the bigger picture, just how the entire solar recycling ecosystem is changing around you. So I know when you started, and that not too long ago, but there are only 3 to 5 solar panel specific recyclers in the country, in the whole country, which is crazy. Now the space is expanding rapidly, but what's maybe the biggest shift you've witnessed in just 5 years?
Well, it's expanding rapidly because it needed to. And so, and there's just been a lot of publicity about this being a growing industry. So what we've really seen are recyclers that were already like e-waste recyclers upgrading equipment in order to take solar panels in. So we've basically seen a lot of expansion in recyclers that are now marketing to solar panel recycling. And then we also see other companies that are starting and investing in becoming a solar panel only recycler. So even though when I started, now I wasn't an expert, I was just trying to find some solar panel recyclers, that can handle this. And so there really wasn't very many. And at the time we were partnered with just one of them. And so now it's great to have a lot more options. And we haven't even seen the need yet. Like right now, we have a lot of solar panel recyclers, probably more than the panels that need to be recycled. But there's, going to come a time where you imagine only one large utility site that needs 1 million panels recycled. That takes a regular recycler all year to do. It will increase. There will be a greater need for recycling, and I'm sure that the demand will drive that recycling expansion as well. So, but it will be important for customers to start having recycling partners that they work with me. because I can
Yeah.
find you the best ones. But I'm saying you want to be able to have a relationship, because there will be a time, and it's already starting to happen, where you can't get your panels recycled for another month or two because
Right.
they're filled, they can't take any more. And that will be more normal than not in the future. So it's good to start having a relationship where they know you, you've done business with them, you're going to have a priority to do business with them again. And that way you can get your solar panels recycled when you need to and get them off site. So it's important to build those relationships early before you need them.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's one of those things. Yeah. Before you need them, that's a key. It's like when you need them, that's the hard time to go and try to develop a relationship and find somebody and start those conversations early for sure.
Exactly.
You touch on a little bit just critical minerals,
Mhm.
recovering those, and obviously we can't mine those forever indefinitely. Are today's recycling technologies advanced enough to start recovering those critical materials and minerals like silver and copper at scale? Or are we just scratching the surface? Like tell us a bit about that.
Yeah. No, there's some different technologies that are out there, and the one technology, which is early technology, is still used, is shredding the solar panel, separating, getting the aluminum off of there, and then going to a smelter to pull out these more precious materials. And that's good. And then there's some more advanced technologies, which is in the separation process itself, which is cutting off the glass and then being able to shred and then separate that copper and silver right there before a smeltering process is necessary. And so it's getting a higher degree of that critical material than it would before. Again, I've spoken with other engineers and developers that they hope to have that even better. And so no doubt it will. So that will continue to be an important part of keeping the cost down of recycling, is being able to gain and to keep the value of those precious minerals, materials.
It's cool to see, I guess, that technology evolving, it becoming more readily available, and hopefully less people thinking like, oh yeah, you can't do that. You can't recycle them. You can't recover the minerals and those sort of things. So it is happening.
Right.
It is
It's
evolving.
happening. Yeah.
A lot of really cool things happening out there. One of the keys to success, I think, is making it easy, right? And I think if it's extremely difficult for a company to recycle a panel and it's, cumbersome and it's all this sort of stuff, that obviously you're going to have a lot of resistance to that. So how do you make it easy for companies, large or small, to recycle?
I love that you asked that. That's just been a thing that I've personally wanted to make it, really easy to deal with, to deal with me.
Yeah.
Is make it super easy so that someone can tell me what they have and I manage their project all the way through. So they're not having to be, turned on to somebody else who's going to, manage the freight, and somebody else is going to manage something else, that I can get all the information real quickly. I can get quotes to them. I know what we're doing. I manage and can take care of, where it's going and the logistics, and can give them packaging guidance information and hold their hand all the way to the time they get their certificate of recycling. So I just want it to be easy. So, it's really not that hard. I mean, whether they're going to me or somebody else, it's the hardest thing is when you've never done it. And I've talked to so many project managers and people out on site, and even in other roles in the company, they don't even know the questions to ask, right? But they finally, someone tasks them with, I got to get these recycled, so I don't even know where to start. So that's been great. I just tell them, you don't need to know a dang thing. I will ask you questions. You will give me answers, and we'll know what you have, what make and model are they, where are they? I'll tell you how to palletize them,
Yeah.
And we'll get those out of there. It'll be quick and easy and painless, and then you'll know how to do it next time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Trust the expert. They know what to do. You don't have to know what to do.
You don't
just
have
have
to
to
know
know
what
the
to
right
do.
person.
Exactly.
Exactly. Yeah, back to your point of relationships, right? Like that's an important thing, and getting those early. And I'm sure like one of the biggest barriers is really like awareness and that, like knowing where to start, what to do. So appreciate you sharing that perspective. And you've given us a wide angle view of the industry. I want to zoom in a little bit on you, just your leadership, your philosophy, how you sustain momentum in a space that's just starting to really find its footing. I always am very intrigued with any of this sort of stuff. So your mission being kind of to keep solar panels out of landfills. How do you sustain that sense of mission when the scale of problems of millions of panels coming down, it can feel overwhelming, I'm sure. It's still getting there, evolving and maturing. How do you keep that passion alive?
So that's a great question. I mean, I don't get up in the morning and worry about if panels are going to the landfill. I get
Yeah.
up in the morning and I start I always like to start my day with intention, and I believe that, maintaining a personal mindset is the originator of everything else. And
Yeah.
so my purpose is to live with joy and happiness, truthfully, and to make a difference. So it's like that's more important. And it leads everything. I talk about
Mhm.
mindset skills all the time, and everything that I've done for, 30 years basically has been on developing mindset and teaching mindfulness and those type of things. And, I think this industry is challenging. My perspective, and I'm very entrepreneurial, and our company, is a small company and constantly changing and moving. And there's been plenty of times where I thought, like when the reuse market died, well, I was mostly doing reuse and it went away. So
Yeah.
it's it's like, okay, my good is not dependent on only one stream.
Yeah.
I'm here to prosper and be happy and to make a difference. And so if not this, then what? And then that, really forced me to focus completely on recycling. But because of that, I was able to build wonderful, strong partnerships all over the country with recyclers, with processors, with, working with logistics teams and build these great relationships to be able to help my end customer to be able to get their panels recycled at the lowest price and at the closest facility to them. It's like, to me, this is the biggest challenge is the as it's called, the solar coaster.
Yeah.
Living on this solar coaster, it's like, okay, one door just closed, and we're dealing with that big time in renewable industry. Everybody's
Right.
like, what? There's nothing consistent. We can't
Mhm.
depend on anything. So I wind it back to the mindset. How is it that I can live with, grit? If one door closes, how do I find a door that's open? There's another door open. And then the practice, the great, emotional intelligence skills
Yeah.
of mindfulness to be able to calm our own stress, to be able to live in the moment, to be able to bring intelligence to the situation that is at hand by not being reactive and learning to respond better. These mindset skills are key to living in a changing environment, an environment that's changing all the time. We have to learn, how can we live in the middle of a roller coaster and
Yeah.
yet still drive something forward?
Yeah, I love that focus on mindset so much,
Yeah.
and it's funny. You obviously very familiar with the solar coaster, and of course the ups and downs. I hadn't maybe made that connection between the leaders I talk to in the industry are some of the best leaders I've ever met in my life.
Hmm.
Just mindset mentality. They are positive. They are solutions focused. They have that like a lot of times. Let's pivot. We're still going to do it. We're good. We're not giving up. We're going to make a difference.
Yeah.
And maybe it's funny. It's like people that have made it and done really well probably do have a lot of that mindset and ability. But that connection is really cool to make, and I think it's so important, especially in an industry like ours, very purpose driven, but also a lot of ups and downs, a lot of challenges, a lot of headwinds and objections, and you got to
Right.
kind of figure it out and keep your mindset intact and focused on what you can control and seeing the opportunities, right? And
Yeah.
because as I heard, I was listening to something today, it says, and I've said it before, you'll find what you're looking for. If you're looking for it,
Yes.
that's what you're going to find.
Yes,
So
that's true. I believe that.
yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
So a little bit your career prior to, so before Fabtech, you spent 20 years leading nonprofits and doing great work. How has that maybe leadership experience helped you navigate the renewable energy industry? Maybe we just started to touch on it, but anything else to add there?
Yeah, I think what we were just saying is exactly right, because I was a founder.
Yeah.
Founded spiritual communities and did a lot of different things. And so it's that same mindset stuff that we're just talking about. It's that those mindset skills of not giving up, and if this door isn't opening, looking over here.
Yeah.
And of course, because my work was specifically about mindset and teaching spiritual principles and meditation and that sort of thing, that had to carry into everything that I
Yeah.
did. It's like I couldn't like sell I couldn't sell mindfulness by being a chaotic, crazy leader.
Right. Yeah, proof's in the pudding, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Let me ask you this question. With all of your experience and skills and mindset and mindfulness, the period that we're in right now, uncertain a bit, shifting policy changes, those sort of things, for a leader or anybody in the industry that's listening right now, and maybe it's just having a tough time, they're having trouble staying positive or feeling hopeful, what sort of advice would you offer to that individual?
I think the most important thing is we have to learn how to manage our own personal state as the first course of action. We say that stress makes you stupid, and it does. If you're in a stress state, you do not get information to the frontal lobe, and you do
Yeah.
not get good ideas, and you react. So the first thing is always developing, get a meditation app, really. Get some help because you can learn to calm your system down, calm your stress down, and learn to live in the moment. The other thing I believe, and I believe this, and it's helped me so much, is most of us all the time, we're always going to the future or the past. Our head is going to the future and the past. And
Yeah.
when we're in times of change and transition and stress, our thoughts are fear-based and they go into an unknown future, and there's nothing to hook onto. And so that causes more stress and more stress. And when we learn to just let the cares of the day be enough, stay in this moment. What can I do here? What can I do today to be able to solve something or to be able to make a decision or be able to move forward? And the more we learn to stay in the moment and to be able to stay calm in the moment, the better our futures are going to turn out to be, instead of worrying and projecting into the future. Now, that is a mindset skill. It doesn't mean that we don't vision, we don't plan, we don't have goals, but we make much better decisions and much better insights and have a greater vision for the future when we are in a calmer, non-reactive state.
Yeah, that's so good. I love that so much.
Yeah.
I'll listen to that over and over again, probably. I want to end just kind of looking ahead a little bit, just to where the industry's headed, what the next decade could look like. If you look at ahead, 10 years,
Yeah.
2035, you kind of got this first massive wave of utility scale projects that'll hit into life. What does the recycling landscape look like for you in that horizon?
Yeah, I mean, I obviously think there's going to be more recycling centers, and I think there's going to be a lot more organized pickup locations. That's more for residential solutions. I also think there's probably going to be some sort of on-site portable separation equipment or something. When you start having million solar panels off a site, it's going to not make sense to transport that many panels to one facility. So I can imagine some sort of preliminary separation or something like that could happen on a large scale. So yeah, that will continue to grow and expand. And again, with other things that we've talked about with landfill banning and residential solutions is a whole other ball game. But, there needs to be smaller local drop-off points and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I believe that there will be a lot more solutions, probably things we haven't even thought of yet.
Absolutely. Without a doubt, there will be.
Yeah.
It's cool to think about the future and obviously plan for it. Thinking about, so, if you could change one thing, maybe how solar developers plan their projects today, thinking about the future, what would it be to ensure a more sustainable end of life tomorrow?
Budget.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yep.
Yeah, including, I mean, that's just really basic, including budgeting for recycling early on.
Yeah.
That hasn't, that was not really in the plans before, but if, as it is, there's money to pay for different things. When it becomes an acceptable cost and it's budgeted for, then it doesn't become such an issue.
Yeah, absolutely. Budget early. You bring people like you involved in the conversation early as well too.
Yeah.
It's that planning and being proactive, not waiting until it's time and you're like, oh man, I got to do something about this. And it's tough at that point. Any other kind of future changes or trends in the industry, things that you're excited about? Like, what's giving you hope right now?
I tell you, the thing that's given me the most hope is that companies are planning for recycling. I know that's kind of boring. I've been saying it the whole time we're together, but it
That's
does
good.
give me hope. I mean, I've seen huge growth in just, 5 years. And I love that I have people reaching out to me all the time that weren't recycling before, didn't think about it, and now it's just what they're going to do. So that gives me a lot of hope. And again, I,
Yeah.
I have also have a lot of hope right now about reuse because I
There you
love,
go.
love, love reuse. And our company has it's a good market for used panels, and we love seeing customers that are coming in now and want used panels. So that makes it more fun for me because now I can bring in more used panels. So I always like to get them into the reuse market where possible, and I'm happy that we're going to be able to do that again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Final question, just anything else you want to share, advice you want to give, anything about recycling, just wherever you want to go, anything you didn't get to share that you want to share, I'll give you the floor and take it away.
All right. Well, if I was going to share anything, it would be to new people coming into renewable energy and what I think is one of the most important skills that can help their career. And I would really encourage everyone to develop mindset skills. I
Mhm.
think nothing helps us succeed more. And one of the things, it's like wherever you find yourself, bring your whole self to that opportunity. And even I have heard a lot of people say, well, I want to do this, but I'm in this job and I don't like that. Wherever you find yourself, you are there. Bring your best and you will work yourself into a greater opportunity all the time. Stay flexible and humble and hardworking and you will absolutely keep moving forward. And that we learn to trust the turns in the road and know that the turns in the road may be taking us someplace new, but it could be something that's even better than we even imagined.
Yeah, that's so good. I love that. Great advice. Such good, solid wisdom in that, and I'm sure that'll sink in with a lot of people. So with that, we'll wrap up today's episode. But Jet, thank you for joining us and leading with both conviction and clarity. Your work at Fabtech Solar Solutions shows that solving the solar waste problem isn't just about recycling panels. It's about redesigning how we think about value, responsibility, and renewal. To our listeners, thank you for tuning in. And if this conversation sparked new ideas or gave you a different lens on clean energy or on mindset, I love that we put some of that in there. Share it with a colleague or friend. Follow Green Giants wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us a review and help us keep amplifying the voices building our sustainable future. And with that, we'll see you soon.
This episode of Green Giants, Titans of Renewable Energy, was brought to you by Lee Group Search. If you enjoyed today's discussion and are looking to recruit top talent for your company or find your next career opportunity in the renewable energy sector, visit leegroupsearch.com. Let's continue driving the future of clean energy together. Until next time, keep pushing toward a greener future.